Hey everybody, Rob from Karma Comic Chameleon coming at you with another ProRevenge story, The Bad Grocery Place. Let's jump right in. I've written before about the good grocery store where I worked in high school. We had a couple of bad customers and a lot of senile seniors, but it was run well with a great manager. The one I worked at for one summer in college was The Bad Place. It was 1994 in a chain grocery store with a truly awful manager who was straight out of business school. He was also the regional office's director's son, so he was Teflon. Anything that went wrong got pinned on an assistant manager and or hushed up at the regional level. Awful had managed to install his mistress as one of the assistant managers. I only saw her in the store twice, and both times she was shopping. One of the times she didn't even pay. Awful paid no attention to people's time constraints. We had a bunch of teenagers who were attending summer school. He didn't care. He scheduled however he wanted and left us to swap shifts among ourselves. I personally saw him tell one girl she'd have to miss school because he needed her on shift and she couldn't find coverage. Crazy illegal. He didn't care about legalities. Awful's belief was that if the computer would accept it, then it was fine. It was the early days of computerized payroll, so the system would take literally anything with no checks. He made the teenagers work hours they legally couldn't. I'm talking too late, too early, and lots of overtime. If they complained, he threatened to fire them. That was his answer to everything, and work wasn't easy to come by in that area. There were teenagers in tears because he wouldn't let them take time for family vacations, or they were being forced to miss tests at school. One guy was fired because he went to his sister's wedding. He'd warned Awful about it months in advance, and it was a holiday weekend, so nobody could swap. Awful was very rarely, if ever, in the store his entire shift. He'd clock in, get the few really important things done, then leave. He'd come back in the middle of his shift to do the bank deposits, then be gone again until it was time to clock out. He assigned all his work to the latest Fall Guy assistant manager or other random employees. If he was the only manager on duty, he'd leave his badge for overrides on the desk in the office so we could grab it when needed to override register errors. All of this was massively against company policy. I mentioned in a previous post how National was pretty obsessed with mystery shopper reports and got them directly from the company that did that stuff. We'd get all kinds of conflicting instructions because National's edicts based on those and our regional director's policies would differ. Always fun. What I didn't mention was mystery shoppers were trivial to spot. They'd go straight to the bakery to price out a special order cake, then not buy it, complain about the price, or ask any of the normal questions. They also went to the bathroom, the fish counter, asked for a price check, and made us unring something they decided they didn't want during checkout. There were other things on the list, but those are the obvious ones I remember all these years later. My last week at this show before I headed back to college, I spotted a blatant mystery shopper complete with notepad. Awful had bugged out shortly after open. The mistress was probably busy banging him. The other assistant manager had been fired for the last colossal screw-up, and the only other cashier on shift was at lunch. It was pretty dead, as it was late morning, so no big deal, except that I decided it was time for this show to get reported for what it was. When Mystery came up with her price check item, I forgot to hit the price check button and rang it up for real. Whoops! Time to go get the manager's override badge. I overrode it. Then I tossed that bad boy so hard it went all the way across the manager's desk and down into the sea of cables behind it in the corner. Whoops! I'm sure that if you went to the tapes, this looked incredibly intentional. It was my last week. You could count the f***s I gave on no hands. Somewhere around this time, the other cashier, we'll call her Jenny, got back from her lunch break and I informed her that was about to get real. She might want to go home sick if she wanted some cover. Nah. Jenny giggled and wanted a front row seat. Besides, the lunch rush was coming. We had a construction area nearby, and a lot of the guys came for the prepared foods for a cheap, hot lunch. We started to get lunch rush, and more of a crowd by the time Mystery made it up to the register to check out. Of course, she needed me to unring something for her checklist, so I flipped on the Help Me Obi-Wan light. Nothing happened. I called for Awful over the intercom by manager first name last name. Jenny caught on real fast and told me to just go get the badge from the office. Awful first name last name must be doing the money drop or something. I pointed out to Jenny that it was against company policy. She rolled her eyes and told me that's what Awful first name last name had said to do. Now, where was that override badge? I headed up to the office and made a good show of looking for it. Called down to Jenny asking if she had it. Nope. Jenny abandoned the big order she was ringing up and came up to the little office to give a cursory look around. This is where the whole story took a turn I hadn't gamed out. See, I was just going to give Mystery a very bad visit with many violations to report. There'd have been an embarrassing reaming from National and possibly even an investigation. Jenny had other plans. Jenny was going nuclear. Jenny apologized to the mystery shopper, but she was going to have to get in Jenny's line now. I couldn't void the transaction or log into 2 registers at once, so I was going to help her pack it up, and Jenny would get to Mystery as soon as she could. Now, this is somewhat bullshit. While true as stated, we all knew how to unplug the registers to get them to reset and log us out. It was a dumb hack, but it worked. Thing was, there was almost zero chance Awful or Mystery knew that. Mystery must have loved her mystery shopping gig because she was the most cheerful, screwed over customer you ever did see. She smiled, assured us everything was fine, and scribbled in her notebook the whole time. Literally, while I'm loading up Mystery's cart at my register, Jenny accidentally rang up a gallon of milk about 6 times. Whoops! No override card, no manager, no head cashier with any power either. Cost-saving cuts there, the Awful made early in his days before I arrived. We apologized profusely to the customers, but explained we had no idea where Awful was, offered to check in the back, sent a bagger out to check on the lot in case Awful was on a smoke break. No joy. As this fiasco rolled on, we had a lot of very unhappy customers on our hands, and the downright giddy Mystery who stayed to the bitter end. We were demanded to call a manager. We tried all Awful's known numbers. Who's above him? Oh, that's regional. We were not allowed to call them. Very strict instructions. True, and very against company policy. From manager first name last name. But we can give you their number. Phone's right over there. Many took advantage. We also got yelled at a lot, but in spite of some sympathy for the customers, we were loving every second of it. Regional took about 2 hours to get somebody down to the store who could clear the registers. Nobody else in the store had permissions on that system. Awful still hadn't shown up. Regional dude overrode the registers, but by then the damage was done. We'd missed the whole lunch rush. No hot food was sold. Our metrics for the day were going to be unbelievably shitty. Regional dude was on the phone frantically trying to figure out how to cover this mess up for his boss, Awful's father, and decided to blame it on a computer outage. I think they intentionally broke some equipment to help sell that story. Awful rolled in after I clocked out, but I'm told Regional Dude was still there doing Awful's job. Awful was unbearable for the next couple days, but I had a foot out the door. Jenny, it turned out, simply didn't care because she'd been doing the work of a head cashier without the pay. It took a few weeks for the fallout to happen, and you bet I kept in touch with Jenny to find out. From this point, I only know what Jenny told me as I was back in college a few states away. A few weeks later, an audit team from National came down to investigate. The mystery shopper story hadn't lined up with the computer outage story, and something was obviously hinky. They dug into the books and found all the labor violations for minors working overtime and too early or late, interviewed the employees and found out about the scheduling during school time problems, manager absenteeism, no vacation being allowed, also that the store was constantly short-staffed, no people ran for the hills as soon as they got anything else. Finally, that an assistant manager was on payroll full-time, but nobody had ever seen her work. She clocked in and out within seconds of Awful every shift he worked, but was never there. Them dots ain't hard to connect. I don't know if they covered up all the labor violations or not. Probably, that would have caused massive fines. I was too young to know to report them. However, Awful, his father, and his mistress all got fired or resigned quietly. The store reportedly went back to being pretty functional after that. Jenny got a better job and left within the year. I never worked retail again. This story brought back a lot of memories from when I was a front-end service clerk at a grocery store, my first job at 16 years old. My worst day I ever had there started out with a message over the intercom system saying, "Front-end service clerk to the back bathroom, please." I went to the back bathroom, and there was shit everywhere. But that's another story for another day. Once again, this is Rob from Karma Comic Chameleon saying thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe, like, and share the video with your friends, or I'm eating all the cookies. Om nom 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 nom.